Hi, I'm Jim Wilson from Orlando, Florida, and I'm celebrating my 49th year in the commercial investment real estate world. Tried to list and sell for 2 or 3 years and got excited about the ability to deal with long-term clients and do exchanges and charitable trusts. So that's kind of how my career path has gone over the years, and have had a really great career in real estate, have been in a lot of transactions that have been highly beneficial for my clients over the years, and probably done closings in 19 or 20 states and worked on transactions that included probably 40 states. So had a great time, a lot of fun in the real estate business, and I'm happy to say that I'm still working and intend to continue. I'll probably hold the box open and say, Lord, couldn't I do just one more deal? The terminology is conventional brokerage, and then the other terminology is equity marketing. And conventional brokerage tends to focus in on the real estate and leave the understanding and perception of why somebody wants the property to them, and that becomes their burden. And it's heavily involved in passive marketing. Equity marketing, on the other hand, the major focus is not on the vehicle, it's on the people. And the foundation principle is that the real value of a property in a specific time, location, character of property has to do with the benefit relationship of the owner or owners to that particular property. And we look at everything as a vehicle that affects the benefits, which includes cash. You know, just because you have cash doesn't mean that everybody will take it. And it may not be the most beneficial thing for you to do it. So the main difference is the focus of equity marketing is on the people relationship, and a kind of a corollary to that is an understanding that the person who wants what you're offering may not be offering what you want. And so one of the tenets of the equity marketing world is, if that's the case, we can still make a transaction and achieve somebody's objective by putting in some additional links. And that's what we do. And that's what marketing sessions are all about. The function of counseling, and that was a term I think applied to real estate by a fellow named Chuck Chatham 60 years ago. I actually was a psychology counselor in a drug rehab program, so I have a tendency to associate the word counselor with psychology and psychiatry and all that. But what it is, it's a function of discovery of someone who owns property that they need to not own, whether that's cash or a piece of real estate, or for that matter, 13,000 bottles of rum, okay? And it is a process by which an agent, representative, and the principal develop a trust and confidence relationship in order to be sure that the person who's the agent going out to execute the marketing or execute the solution to their problem truly understands all the facts and information and the people context of why they need to not own this and they need to own something else. And interestingly enough, a major reason for developing this discovery process is because an overwhelming majority of people don't know what they need. And many of them think it's time to sell or to go out of title when they really should keep the property. I mean, some of my most memorable moments are when I'm working with somebody and they say, oh man, I think it's time to sell. We do some analysis for them and say, oh, I'm not sure that we can find you anything that will do better for you than what you got. It just blows their mind. And I said, isn't that how you make your living, as commissions? But the discovery process is really the Socratic method. And that means, is named after Socrates, obviously. And that means that you lead someone to think through whatever the situation is that they're trying to understand or learn by asking enough questions that lead them, even if you have to convey information. Sir, we're looking at the price on your property, but there's a very similar property about 1.5 miles down the road that just sold for a lot less than we're talking about asking. And there are 2 other properties all within 1.5 miles that are on the market that are very, very similar to yours, that are priced lower than we're talking about offering this out. How do you think that's going to affect our marketing? And then I shut up. And I wait until they process that, because if I try to tell them consciously or subconsciously, they're going to have their defensive belief kick in. It's important in our world of equity marketing to be able to have the client, the owner, the principals, the decision maker really have that understanding so that they are making their transaction decisions on real understanding and facts. A customer is someone who is not willing to disclose all the necessary private information that you might need in order to make a transaction. A customer might be someone who really doesn't care whether they go out of title to their property or not, if they can find what we call in Florida the greater fool theory. If we can find a greater fool who will come down here and pay this premium price for this property, we'll certainly sell it. On the other hand, if I still own it in 10 years, I don't care. Another characteristic of a customer is someone who demands, I want my price and terms, and if they're not willing to pay my price, they can go somewhere else. A client, on the other hand, and we're talking about client in the character of a trust and confidence relationship as an attorney or a CPA might have, or a financial planner might have. And this is not built overnight. It's not uncommon to take maybe 6 or 8, 9, 10 months, 12, 15 sessions together in order to reach the point where the principal is comfortable enough that the agent really is going to represent them, is not going to take advantage of them, that they can say, I need to sell this property because I'm being sued over here and I got a big legal bill. Or I really need to sell this because I have an IRS problem and they will only take money. They're not going to take this piece of land. Well, they are going to take the piece of land, but then I have nothing. And so you get to this trust and confidence relationship, and what that allows the agent to do is to go to the market and recognize exactly where we want to end up. Because I'm their agent, it's where they want to end up, it's not where I want them to end up. And so that discovery process takes a customer or a contact from somebody that we might do business. And hell, people say, have you ever taken a listing where because you just want to put the sign on the property? Yes. But they're customers. And I let them know right up front, I think they're overpriced, and I doubt seriously we're going to get that price and terms, but I would take the listing. I will do some marketing. I won't lie about that. But that's a customer. On the other hand, if they tell me what their problem is, I have this office building's 40% vacant, I owe IRS, $82,000. I've got another 4 months to pay that, and I can't find a buyer for my office building. Now I know what I need. And now I don't have to find a buyer for the office building. I got to find a way to use the equity in the office building to get $82,000 out at closing. Not in competition, we're collaborators, because we understand that the only reason a transaction goes together is because I'm giving up something that does not give me as many benefits as I'm getting from you. And you're getting something that gives you more benefits than what you have. And that includes cash. Cash is generic equity. I mean, we moved from the barter system to the cash money system about 150 years ago. And the problem with cash, doesn't matter which one, whether it's yuans or US dollars or pesos or whatever, it has no intrinsic value. It's like gunpowder. It's only good after you blow something up. So really, very few people want cash because it doesn't do anything. They want something that cash can go into easily. Now there are that few number of people that they want a certain amount of cash in the bank or under the bed or in the safe to feel secure, emotionally secure. But isn't that a benefit of owning the cash? Right. So you cannot get to closing. If I'm selling this, I want to go out of title of that. Notice I say go out of title, go out of ownership. I can't do that unless I can find somebody who wants that. And historically, in the overwhelming majority of most of real estate, they say if you want my cup of coffee, you have to be offering cash. Well, at any one time in the market, there's a minuscule number of people with cash and or credit who want that property or want that cup of coffee. However, if you understand that there are millions and thousands of other people who have equity capital locked up in equity and property and luxury cars and condos and surfboards and 13,000 bottles of rum that might like to have this. Now, I don't want the 13,000 bottles of rum. You know, somebody offers me a beer for this. I'm glad for you to have my cup of coffee, but I don't want your beer. However, that doesn't mean I have half a transaction, because the other half of the deal is have to have someone who is offering what I want. Now, I wanted tea,
Right.
you know, I wanted a bottle of water, and you say, I got a bottle of water, boy, I'd love to have the beer. And now we have a deal, and we all come to the table bringing what has the reduced number of benefits, put it in the table, reshuffle, and everybody goes away from the table with a better set of benefits than they have. And one of the reasons I say better, sometimes if you have a problem, all you can do in a transaction is improve your position. Let's say you have a $20,000 a month negative cash flow ownership property, and I can get you out of that and into a $2,000 a month negative cash flow property. Are you a whole lot better off? You're gonna make that transaction most likely? Probably. Yeah, and that's the concept. So when we come here, you know, there are 114 or 15 people in this marketing session, and we're from all these different states and towns and cities. Virtually none of us, well, there are 2 or 3 people from the same company in a few cases, but we all have a different company name, we have a different address, but you know what? We're all in business together. We are colleagues. They're not competitors, which is why, you know, somebody with a problem property, you have somebody stand up and give them a solution idea, and they're not going to participate in that deal, they're just trying to help. That's the difference in this marketing session venue. And so that's why this is so different, is because we automatically understand that you can't go out a title until you have a taker and a haver. And if you say the taker must have cash, you went and you limited your market. Whereas if I said, I really, really need a taker. In fact, I'm talking to somebody this morning, and they have an antebellum property in Mississippi, right outside of Natchez, and they need a taker. It's been on the market several years. They need a taker with something, okay? And so I happen to know some people probably would take it, but they're not gonna offer what the owners want. But that's half of the deal, isn't it? You can't get the closing unless you have at least one taker. And so that's the difference about what we do.
Okay.
That's what equity marketing is all about. And one of my favorite formulas is to do a discounted sale with an option buyback. And this is a very handy tool, especially in down cycles in the market, where you have, let's say I have and I've done this many times in more than one state, you have a builder and they went out and they developed a subdivision and streets and the sewer lines and the water fire hydrants and all there, but the market's gone away and it doesn't make any sense to build houses today. But that market's gonna come back. And in my history, in my process, it always has. You know, in the depths, it looks like dark, but it's coming back. So, but you've got a lot of capital tied up in those finished lots. And let's say they're worth $100,000 a piece, just for easy thought. Now, if I try to go out and get an investor to give me $100,000 a lot for them, they'd probably say, nah, the market kind of stinks. But if I went out and said, hey, I will give you the title, to this lot for $50,000, but I want an option to buy it back in 3 years or 5 years for $60,000, or whatever negotiated amount you can. So I can take this piece of capital that I have out here that's neutral right now. It's not doing me a whole lot of good. In fact, it's probably causing me a problem because I got to pay taxes, cut the grass, and probably have liability insurance on it. And so now I can put that capital to work while the market is down, and when the market comes back, I exercise my option, and I control my inventory of lots, but I got some capital. Well, put on the investor's hat. you know, the investor, this becomes what I lovingly call a candle transaction. It's got an option on it. You light a candle and put it in the window every night, say 3 Hail Marys, and hope the guy doesn't exercise the option because you just bought that lot for 50 cents on the dollar. And it's probably going to sell for 100 grand. One of the transactions that I'm very proud of, I actually use in the class. It's a 5-way exchange. And it started out with a couple and their kids that had acquired a little beat up, rundown 2-family residential rental property in Central Florida. And they had bought it cheap because it was run down, beat up, and they went over and hammered and nailed and painted and all that stuff over the years. And they finally, this neighborhood gentrified. So all of a sudden the value goes up because people really want to be there, and it's just a block from the lake, etc. And they really upgraded. Every time they change the cabinets, they're a little nicer, and the countertops, etc. So now the property they bought for $62,000 is really, really worth $250,000. and people are standing in line to rent it at top rents for that market. Except they've owned this now for 15 years, actually a little more than that, but 15 years is a good number. And over 15 years, what happens is the mortgage they bought it with, it's gone. I mean, it's down to like a few $1,000s. There's no interest deduction. The depreciation, i.e. cost recovery today, is flat. And every year, the basis, that's the original price against which they're going to pay taxes eventually, goes down. And they have more and more rent, more and more of that rent's now taxable, etc. So their after-tax return on their investment capital is going down every year. You know, making 6% this year, and 5.25%, and 4.5%, and you know, not a good way to go. You want it to go the other way. So what they want to do is they want to do this again. They want to get another rundown, beat-up residential property because they know this market. But they don't want to sell because they don't want to pay the taxes and reduce their equity by, you know. So they need a 1031 exchange, meaning that they can defer their capital gains until later when they sell. And so we need to go out and find a bigger rundown, beat up property. They wanted something between 8, 10, up to as many as 20 units. And we ran around and we found 20 units that were run down, beat up, you know, all the right things wrong with it, and made them an offer. And of course the 20 unit owner said, I don't want a duplex. I don't want the 20 units I got now. Same problem. Well, we wrote a contract and said, fine, we want your property, and we won't close until we either find a buyer for the 2-family or we find, what would you rather have? Ultimately, after a few conversations over a period of a couple of weeks, I said, you know, we really like owning, and guess what? They had a tax problem too if they sold. And so I said, oh, $80-something thousand, what tax? No, I don't want to do that. And so they decided what they wanted was what we lovingly in our business call fewer toilets per square foot. They wanted out of residential into a small multi-tenant commercial property where the leases are like 3, 4, 5 years. The tenants pay to keep the parking lot up and their portion of the taxes, etc. They all go home by 10 o'clock at night. And so that's what they want to do. Well, we run up and down the street. Now we're building this one leg, one step at a time, right? We don't start with all the pieces, we start with one. We went out, found a little strip center at $1.6 million that filled the bill. They went over to see it, and we wrote the contract, and they did the homework. And they said, yeah, we do that. And so they offered the 2-family that they're getting for their 20 plus the cash that the 2-family owners is bringing, part of which they're going to get out of new financing, part of it's coming out of their bank account. So they're going to pass the cash and the 2-family around to the strip center owner. And the strip center owner said, I don't want a duplex. What do you want? Oh, I need passive income. We call it mailbox money. You know, the tenant takes care of absolutely everything, lovingly called a triple net lease. And we found one, and the triple net lease owner said, same thing, I don't want a duplex. You know, my daddy said, only close for cash. Close mine, yeah, you can't talk to him about anything else. So he's now there saying, I don't want this duplex. So we found a buyer with good credit and $75,000. And they said, I want the duplex. And so They bought the duplex and we just passed the money around the table to each leg until the guy with the triple net lease, he went away from the table with only cash. The 20 units went away from the table with the strip center. The strip center owner went away from the table with the triple net lease. And my clients, the two-family owners, went away from the table with this nifty 20 units that was run down, beat up. The rents were about 40% under the market, hadn't been renovated for 10 years. And they were so happy they brought me a very nice gift besides my commission. The triple net lease owner obviously had to pay taxes on any gain he had. However, the 40 units was priced at about $950,000, and the strip center was priced at $1.6 million. So we're going up. The rule of thumb is equal or greater in price, equal or greater in debt when it's closed. So he's going up. However, the retail center owner is getting a $1.2 million triple net lease. So when it's all done, he gets the triple net lease and puts $400,000 in his pocket. And that's called a partially tax deferred exchange. And he will pay taxes on the $400,000 up to whatever amount of gain that he has on the property. And the problem with not many people ascribing to the people side or the creative equity marketing side, just frankly, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work. And you have to be willing to do a lot more creative things. Most of the rest of the commercial investment real estate world, they only have one tool, and it's a hammer. And so everything that comes down the pipe is the nail. And the way you do that is you raise a flag, blow a horn, send out ads, put it on LoopNet, and you just keep blowing a horn, and you wait till somebody comes by and buys it. One of the business models in all of real estate is if you can list enough stuff and throw it against the wall, some of it will stick, and if it sticks enough, you make a profit. And in good times, you make a lot of profit. I mean, I know people that make literally millions in good years. On the other hand, when you have a 2008, it will test your holding power to stay in business. And we saw a lot of realtors go out of business in that crisis. I saw in the 1974 oil crisis, which dragged on for about 3.5 years. We probably lost 40% of all real estate brokers in Central Florida. They went out of business. There just wasn't any business. We went from the time I closed the transaction back in those days on International Drive, which was really just when Disney and all of that was coming in. And we were selling sites there for $3,000 a front foot. And by the time the oil crisis really kicked in, which took about 3 or 4 months, you couldn't give it away. Nobody would buy it. And up to that point, if you could get the listing, you could sell. And so this all runs in cycles. And the business model that I have chosen to take is the equity marketing model, and to work with long-term clients. And probably over the last, I had 6 months experience about 10 times, so. So over probably the last 40 years or so, I've started to figure out what I was doing, and I've done the overwhelming majority of my transactions with probably fewer than 100 people, 100 principals. And I still have 3 or 4 active clients, a couple of which have worked with me for 35 years. I probably close somewhere between 80 and 90% of everything I work on. And not only that, good times and bad, I'm in business. Because in fact, in bad times, I'm overwhelmed because there's more people who have a big enough problem who have finally said, I gotta do something. And it's challenging, it's fun. I get to work with really great people. Most of my clients, after a number of years, were closer to friends or family. I carried the box on 5 or 6 of them when they died. And I watched their kids grow up and all of that stuff. And it's kind of a very rewarding thing. One of the downsides is that you don't get to stay home if you're working with long-term clients. Wherever the market goes, that's where you have to go. That's why I've done transactions in so many locations. And you say, how do you have a license here? Well, I don't. If I have a transaction I'm working on in Arizona, I pick up the phone, I call Dan Arnold, or I call, Tom DeSola or whoever is in that neck of the Arizona war, and I say, I need you to be the broker of record, and oh, by the way, you have to do everything in Arizona because I'm not licensed there. I will handle all of the stuff with the client, the paperwork and all that stuff, but I'm never coming to Arizona while we're working on this deal because I'm not violating your law. And that works the same way that I get the call and they say, Wilson, we need you to be the Florida guy. And we're not showing up. You know, you got to do all the stuff in Florida. And so it is two things. One is more work. It's very rewarding because you greatly increase your efficiency, production, and quite honestly, your income. But the other thing is probably the exposure to the technology has been very limited over the years. And in fact, the greatest problem I've seen in transactions that should have closed and didn't close and did close that should not have closed were caused by advisors, attorneys, CPAs, and financial planner advisors who had no idea what we were talking about. I thought we were from a different planet. And they weren't being obnoxious, but they had just never, ever been exposed to what we're talking about.
So it's a lack of education.
And realtors are the same way, and they say, you know, I come over and I offer them to make an exchange transaction, and they say, you can't do that. I can't tell you how many realtors, and a few CCIMs have said, yeah, you can't do that. Okay? And so that's why I think we are such a small portion. And the other thing is you don't just get to be one. You earn your spurs here. And I probably have been in the business 20 years before I ever got an invitation to be a member of the Society of Exchange Counselors, which if you're an equity marketer, you know, that's kind of the pinnacle. These days, being part of National Council of Exchangers, probably up on a very similar plane. And I love my job. You know, I have a shorter commute than I used to. I just leave the kitchen table, take my coffee cup down the hall in my house to my office. But I almost can't imagine not doing this at least some. You know, and I live in a cemetery waiting room. I live in a 1,500 house over 55 community. It's beautiful there, the land of golf cart transportation. And it's a wonderful lifestyle, and yeah, I do not work as hard as I used to, but I can't imagine not having the challenge. You know, you can only fish and play golf so long, and then I want somebody to bring me a problem to solve.